What's up, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the On Purpose podcast, where it's always our privilege to show up to you and show up with you and be here to share stories that maybe tug on your heartstrings, get you moving, get you thinking a little bit. And this week, no doubt, will do just that. We're joined by Stephen Panis, an inspiring author, motivational speaker, and a beacon of resilience and hope. He's the author of the powerful memoir, Walk On, a deeply personal and transformative book written in the wake of an unimaginable tragedy, the loss of his beloved son, Jake. Through this journey, Stephen has discovered profound lessons about grief, kindness, and the healing power of compassion and service. And it's our honor to have him on the show and share his story, especially as we get close to the Memorial Day weekend and time spent with our loved ones where we get to reflect on life, right? And those that have gone before us and the sacrifices they made. So before we get to this interview, I want to ask that you help us out a little bit and get over and like, subscribe, share wherever you're consuming our content, comment on social media, help us reach more people with stories just like this. Enjoy this week's interview with Stephen Panis. Stephen, my newest friend, sir, welcome to the On Purpose podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right, Jared. How about yourself?
I'm blessed, man. I've been excited to get you on the show when our paths crossed, and I knew this was an opportunity. I started doing research, and man, I want to thank you for what you're doing first and foremost. I want to applaud the courage you have for sharing your story and impacting the lives of others that maybe didn't even know they needed to hear it, like myself. And thank you for that.
I appreciate your kind words.
So you're a big Gamecock fan. You're a football guy. So, like, I can't just put you in the fourth quarter with 2 minutes left and think you're ready to go. I got to warm you up a little bit. We're athletes here, Steven. You ready to get warmed up, my friend?
Yeah, stretching's important.
Stretching it for us. We got to stretch the mind a little bit. It's early. You're in South Carolina?
No, I went there, but I
Okay.
live in Connecticut now.
Oh, okay. You moved further north. They accepted you up that way.
Yeah, well, I'm originally from the north, so it was kind of
Oh.
like coming home. But I've lived in every time zone in the U.S., so kind of been around.
All right. Well, I'm in Florida right now, so we're just getting going. It's a little
Yeah,
slower
you got
down
the
here
better
right now.
weather. You win on weather.
For sure. And that's not by accident, Steven. We chase weather. That's our lifestyle now. All
Good
right,
choice.
let's get you warmed up, my friend. Sunrise or sunset?
Oh, I'm a sunrise guy. Mornings are golden.
Oh, nice. What's your favorite thing to do in the morning? Or what's one of the first things you do?
Make a good cup of coffee and just kind of gather my thoughts. Morning is just, I'm the first one up in my house, so it's my quiet time. It's great reflection, introspective. Enjoy listening to the sounds of nature as as you said, as the sun rises and the darkness moves away and the day lights up. It's awesome.
Yeah, I love it. What's a favorite quote or a quote that stuck with you that you kind of go by?
God, there's so many, but I think Oscar Wilde, be authentically who you are, because everyone else is taken.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
And what's that when you think on that one, what does that remind you to do?
I think it just reminds you to be exactly who you are, and the power of being authentic is so important in life, and being true to yourself, right? Can you look yourself in the mirror and be really content with your
Yeah.
choices, with your actions, your words, your behavior?
Yeah,
So
that's
many,
good.
especially in this day and age, so many are looking to be something other than who they are. We see it on social media, right? People just leave this, put on this air, if you will, or this fake lifestyle or whatever. And it's kind of like I call it the edited persona, right?
Yeah.
And it's not worth it. It's you're chasing false dreams and false um character traits. Just be who you are.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because even if you reach, so say you're in that game and you're pretending you're who you're not, even if you reach your desired goal, whatever you think that may be, when you get there, it's not really you.
Yeah,
What the hell was the journey?
not a happy ending.
No, right? No way. All right. What's a song that's either stuck in your head or on repeat that you're listening to nowadays?
Ooh, Anxiety. And I can't even pronounce her name, a young female rapper. It's a great song.
Anxiety, huh?
Yeah, it's Docile or something like that. I'd have to look up her name. My daughter played it recently, and I heard it, and I'm like, it got my attention. It
Oh yeah. Was it the lyrics or the beat or what?
was everything. Yeah,
Huh. I'll have to
it's
look
definitely
that
the
up.
beat at first because she samples some old songs, and uh, yeah, it caught my attention, and obviously the title.
Yeah. Now that's good letting the young people pick your music. Keep you current.
Well, yeah, I mean, I got a pretty wide music palette, so but it's fun to be introduced to new music, you know.
Yeah. It's just here's what I think, Steve. It's fun to be introduced to anything new. Food,
Amen.
music, conversation, language,
People,
people like
yeah,
this.
yeah, that's the wholeness of life, right? Is that you're going to accept everything that comes your way, and it's not all going to be roses and bowls of Cheerios. It's going to be hard times. It's going to be okay times. It's going to be great times. But if you're open to it, you'll take the seeds of the good and the bad and make the best of it.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's the completeness of it, right? Like if you only had good or bad, you're missing the other half of the equation.
Yeah, you would lack perspective to understand it was even good.
Right. Right. Absolutely. All right. What's a favorite book or a book you read frequently?
My favorite book of all time, the most provocative book I've ever read, is Many Lives, Many Masters.
Okay. Who wrote that? Do you know offhand?
Yeah, it's Dr. Brian. I always blank on his last name. He's a psychiatrist from Yale,
Okay.
and it, it, it it's a true story about his relationship with one particular patient and how he was able to take her into past life regression and to heal her. And in doing so, they discovered that she had led 86 different lives. And it's very, like I said, provocative, uh, profound, and meaningful. And it just shows you the depth of this universe and our existence within it.
Is that a recent read or has that been around for
No,
you for a
I've
while?
read it a long time ago, but it's one that I mean I've never read anything that's topped it as far as leaving an impression and a mark.
Yeah.
Um, I can't believe I'm blanking on his name, Dr. Brian.
Cool.
Anyway, he's pretty
Yeah.
famous.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to look that. So one of my favorite questions I ask guests is what's their favorite book? Because then it gives me a new reading material if I've never heard of it.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. All right. Steven, thank you for being here. Are you feeling warmed up?
Yeah, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, let's get this going. Your book is out, Walk On. It's a powerful memoir, and that's kind of what crossed our paths is the story of your son Jake. So can we just start with that? Like what obviously talk us through what led to this, where you're at
Yeah,
today.
so on August 9th, 2020, my elder son Jake, who was 16 at the time, was away with his girlfriend and her family on a weekend getaway to Block Island, which is a small, tiny summer destination island off the coast of Rhode Island. And we received a phone call from the girlfriend's mother, my wife did, around 1 o'clock in the afternoon on that Sunday. And she shared that there had been an accident. Jake was injured. She had no other details. She wasn't at the scene. And my wife hung up and said, "There's been an accident." She grabbed an overnight bag real quick. I grabbed Liam, Jake's little brother, who was 11. We hopped in the car. And honestly, at the time, I thought he broke his arm. He broke a collarbone. He fell off a bike.
Right.
Something happened at the beach. Just that's where my head was. And we were 12 minutes into the drive, speeding towards Rhode Island. I could tell my wife was a little worried, and her phone rang again. And this time it was a doctor from Rhode Island. He introduced himself, and then he paused, and said, "I'm sorry, but I just pronounced your son dead."
Oh,
And everything went black. And I did my best to get off the highway. My wife screamed the most guttural, piercing sound I've ever heard in my life. And our life blew up. It was absolutely soul crushing. Jake was an incredible young man, 16 years old, bright future, just a one in a billion type kid.
mhm.
Truly, he was unique from the get-go, magnetic personality, lifted everybody up that he came in contact with, spread joy, loved having a good time, and always had a smile on his face. And it's something that no parent ever certainly plans for, even wants to think about. But it's life altering in every single way possible. My entire life has changed as a result, and it led to ultimately writing this book years later, Walk On, and becoming a public speaker, and making sure that as a father, I want to make sure his legacy endures forever.
Mhm.
And I take him to all these different places. I hear his name said. We created 2 scholarship funds in his name. So um, handing those out is incredibly powerful and meaningful. And knowing that each recipient of these scholarships now carries a part of Jake with them means everything to a bereaved parent.
Let's go back to it. So, if I remember right, it was a DUI driver hit him, right?
Yeah, so it was actually worse than that. He was a passenger in the vehicle. We didn't learn the details of the accident until later that Sunday night on August 9th. And sadly, I learned it from social media. But the driver of the car Jake was in was arrested for reckless driving and driving under the influence. And as it turns out, that was Jake's girlfriend. She was a year older than Jake. She was just a couple weeks shy of 17. And Jake was killed. Another boy was airlifted to Providence. He thankfully he's okay, and the 2 other boys in the car were fine.
So talk us through because I doing the research for this. I know it was a process for you to get to the point where you could write the book, and there was a lot of ups and downs emotionally and a roller coaster there. Let's talk through those stages that you went through to get to where you're at now.
Yeah, boy, there's so many. I was a zombie for year one, completely blown out, protected by the um, the shock of it all. Provides some protection because it's impossible for your brain to absorb the reality.
Sure.
Um, my son Liam, again, who was 11, and my wife Kelly didn't want to live at different points in time. It was incredibly hard, without a doubt, the most challenging time period in my life. Just trying to make sure that our family survived collectively. Um, I didn't begin to write until some point in late in year two. And I began to write because I needed a healthy place
Yeah.
to put my feelings. I needed an outlet. I knew stuffing it like and suppressing and sweeping under the rug wasn't the answer. I had to get this out. I didn't need to take it out on any other being. I needed just to get it out on paper. And when I first started to write, it was a goodbye letter to Jake. It um it was hard and painful. I needed breaks. And I was just almost like vomiting everything that I wanted to say. There was the feelings were early on when this happened were obviously intense, profound grief and sorrow and sadness. The most I lost like 15 to 20 pounds. I didn't sleep, barely ate. Um, your whole value system and belief system is shattered. You don't know who to trust or what to trust anymore. You're waiting for the next shoe to drop. You don't trust life.
Right.
Um, it, it's an out of body experience is the best I can describe it. It feels like I was standing still and I watched life just kind of pass me by. So watching everyone else just do their everyday things
Yeah.
and conduct their everyday life. Um, I was a spectator. I couldn't even hop on the merry-go-round, if you will, and be part of that. It took a long time. And one day I looked at Liam and I thought, I'm 52 years old and I'm struggling. How is an 11-year-old boy supposed to process
Yeah.
and cope with losing his beloved older brother? And so I asked Liam to come outside. I said, hey, go up and grab your buck knife and meet me outside. And he did. And we walked across our property, found an old mature tree, and I asked him to carve a swath of bark off the tree. And he carved off a little square. And he said, now what? And I said, now we're going to watch this tree heal. I'm not going to lie to you. It's going to look different. It's going to feel different. Could be a different color. It's going to take time. But this tree is going to regrow new bark and heal this scar. And just like this tree, the same is going to happen to you and I in our hearts. And I'm not going to lie to you, Liam, we're never going to be the same. We're profoundly changed and altered as a result of losing Jake. And there's always going to be this void. But most of our heart can regrow back and heal, and we can find a way to experience joy again and be happy and smile and laugh and live life again. And I wanted Liam to believe not just in me as his father, I wanted him to believe in himself and in the process, and that it would take time, and not to feel pressured by healing in any particular set period of time. And this was because this is not something that you ever truly heal from.
Yeah.
It's not, oh, you broke your back, you'll be back in 4 to 6 weeks or 4 to 6 months. When you lose a child, it's a life sentence, and you lose a sibling, it's a life sentence, and you have to find a way to carry it, because it's a heavy, heavy burden. Carry it and integrate it into your being and find a way to exist and live again. And so that was powerful for me to do with Liam. And I also had this tradition that I had started when Jake was about 5, Jared. He was old enough to read. I started writing him inspirational morning messages on Post-it sticky notes. And
Nice.
they were quotes from an array of known and unknown personalities. They were my own thoughts. And Jake would read them to Liam. And then when Liam was old enough, he started reading them. And in the wake of losing Jake, as I mentioned, you just lose complete faith in everything. I happened to revisit some of those, and I thought, did these mean anything, or was this just bullshit? I had modeled those as truth to my boys, but now I had all these doubts. And so I started to revisit a lot of what I had written, and they focused on positive character traits and values that I thought were really important. And the goal was to instill wisdom and inspiration into their developing heart, mind, and soul. But I had to sit with each one of these again. And now I looked at it with such a different perspective. I was a grieving dad and hurting badly. And I had to look and say, did this message really matter? And in doing that process and revisiting these quotes, it kind of changed how I was writing. It changed from this goodbye letter into more about who Jake was, what he stood for, and what I tried to instill in him, and why he was such a special and unique young man. And so that's how and I wanted to help Liam.
Yeah.
And so I didn't intend to write a book. I just intended to write. When I finished, I realized maybe this can help a lot more people than just Liam, and not just people, grieving the loss of a loved one. Grief is universal. We grieve when we lose a job, when a relationship fails, we separate from our wife, or maybe a divorce happens. We suffer a financial crisis, a friend or a family member gets a poor medical diagnosis. There's just so many different ways we grieve. You don't get into the college of your choice.
Yeah.
But it's universal and it's indiscriminate. And so beyond just losing my son and knowing that there's a lot of people out there that lose children, I recognized how much grief was in this world, and that people are struggling, that they get in really dark places, and I've been there. And so this was a way for me to kind of reframe the question of, what if the hardest moment of your life became the most powerful chapter of your story, and you could rewrite it? And so that's kind of the genesis of Walk On, and it's been an incredible ride. The book was selected by Good Morning America as one of their book club buzz selections, which blew me away, and it's received great reviews and testimonials. And the most powerful thing, honestly, is I know that it's helping people. I get great phone calls and emails from people sharing whatever particular part of the book helped them. And the other interesting part is, a lot of people thought, well, it's going to be a sad book, right? You lost your son. And certainly the first couple of chapters are sad and they're hard to read. But I think the message that often gets lost is that it's a hopeful and inspiring book. That's the biggest takeaway, is that people are moved by it and transformed to do something different in their life, to live differently, and to reprioritize what matters most. And because when you have a life-altering event happen to you, you can't help but have your perspective reshaped. And that's what happened to me. And I thought, I was a pretty optimistic person by nature before August 9th, 2020. Thankfully, I'm still that person, but I'm definitely changed and more connected to humanity than I've ever been. I want to help people more
Yeah.
than I ever did before, and it's what gives my life meaning and purpose.
So it's interesting. I want to go back a minute there. So I've done the same thing with the quotes with my kids. We've raised three kids that are all adults now. And that was one of the things that they still remember is getting sticky notes with quotes, or just randomly I'd hide them for them. So they'd find them whenever, like the universe,
Yeah,
they'd find them whenever they're supposed to find it.
that's so
Was there,
cool.
was there any in particular? Do you remember one that you looked at and you're like, oh, this is that moved you differently, that resonated with you, to challenge you to become better, to move to that next stage?
I think they all did, honestly, because they were all about things like integrity and authenticity and honesty and accountability,
Mm,
um, effort. Most of the things that I wanted to really drive home to my boys was that these are within your control. We don't
yep.
control a lot in life, but we control what we feel and do about what happens to us. And so, if they could, if they could embrace these and then apply them to their lives, I felt like they would become really good citizens and contributors to society. Um, but there were so many, Jared, that it's hard to really pinpoint and say one was more important than the other. I think they're all equally important. Um, and they're all non-negotiable characteristics and traits that really make you a strong person. I wanted them to have the grit and the grace to overcome adversity when it would fall upon their feet, because we all are going to confront adversity, not just
Mm-hmm.
one, usually multiple times in our life. Challenging times, obstacles, setbacks, failures, hard moments, defeats. How do you respond to that is so critical, and the quality, ultimately, I wanted my boys to know that the quality of our mindset architects the quality of our life. So can you think positive during tough times? Can you stay positive? Can you source your inner resilience and pick yourself back up when you get knocked down? And obviously, different events knock you down harder than others. And so it can be challenging, but you have to, if you don't have that foundational base, I'm not sure how you can even begin to pick yourself back up, dust off, get back into life, no matter how long it takes, right? And because each event requires a different pathway, and each person has their own unique pathway.
Yeah, and I love what you said there about controllables, right? That is such a variable that sometimes we give up our power of what we control. And we just think we're at the whim of the universe or whatever's coming our way. We're just a recipient of it. We lose sight that we have controllables and just about everything, how we choose to show up, how we're going to respond.
Yeah.
Eh,
Well, it's funny because for, when I went through losing Jake, one of the struggles at first was I blamed myself, even though I wasn't there, right?
Yeah.
I'm his dad. My job is to protect him. And we have this illusion of control, right? As a parent that, oh, our kid's going to be safe. I sent Jake to sports camps. I sent him to overnight with sleepovers with friends, school, camps. He had left the house plenty of times. He flew on an airplane by himself to see family. But he always came home. And then when he didn't come home, that illusion of control was just blown to smithereens. Like, you know what? The minute I let him go, I lost control. And it makes you focus on the few things that you do control. And you realize, like you said, that there are plenty of things in this life that you don't control. But it's Viktor Frankl said it best, when he said that, you can't control what happens to you in life, but you can always control what you feel and do about what happens to you. And he went through certainly his trying times. He was a survivor of Nazi concentration camps in World War II. He witnessed his entire family be murdered. And he wrote The Man's Search for Meaning, a really powerful book. Um, that chronicled that experience and has helped so many people kind of come through their own personal struggles and battles.
Yeah, Stephen, it's interesting when you're sharing the story about the notes. I keep thinking like, what if you were actually writing them for yourself? Like that whole time you were writing them for your boys to instill stuff, but what if you were actually writing it for that moment, right? You
Yeah.
were sharing those thoughts and they were there. And I think of it like this, right? Like if I knew what I was going to say to my kids today, if I knew what I was going to say to my best friend, my spouse, my coworkers, whatever, if I knew what I was going to say today would come back at some point and be important, would I change what I say to people?
Yeah.
Would I
Well,
be more purposeful? Would I be kinder? Would I tell them the stuff that really matters? Like you were sharing thoughts that really could change their life and give them grit and resilience in life. And it came back to help you find grit and resilience in life.
yeah, that's a really good thought. The interesting thing for me was I had 10 years earlier, we had moved from Nevada. So in 2010, we moved from Las Vegas to Connecticut back to the east where my wife and I were originally from. And I was in between jobs. I was consulting and I wrote a book, a fictional book that the second half of the story came to me in a dream. It was a dream vision, but it was like a voice. And I woke up in the middle of the night and wrote everything down. And that really was the second part of this fictional book that I never really did anything with. But interestingly, the book was about grief, and it was
Oh
about
wow.
a young athlete who dealt with real personal grief, and he went on a journey across the American West to make sense of everything and to kind of understand and what happened and why, if he could, because we all chase that. Our brains are
Mhm.
hardwired to seek out logical reasoning, but then there's things that happen in life that simply aren't going to provide us that logical answer, right? We'll chase our tails looking for that why. So here it was, I finished that in like 2012. 8 years before, I write this book about grief, and then 8 years later, I lose my son.
Yeah.
So to your point, it was almost like something was preparing me for little did I know.
Yeah, man, and I love that in that process you held yourself accountable. You didn't make excuses, right? Like you chose to say, okay, let me look. I'm gonna look at these quotes. I'm gonna challenge myself. Am I living up to the words I gave my boys, or was this just lip service? Because I think that's one of the things sometimes we miss in society, and we miss when we're struggling, no matter what it is we're struggling with, is that accountability to ourself piece, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes we can give ourselves a pass because we
Yeah.
had this terrible thing, but the pass is not going to make you better.
Right. I was angry, bitter. I had rage against our circumstances. It felt very personal to my wife and I that it was like our son was abducted by aliens. One day he's here, and then all of a sudden, just poof, he's gone. Um, his room sat empty for 3 years, and we didn't touch it. And his luggage came home, but he didn't. His friends came home, but he didn't. Um, so I had to deal with, as you said earlier, there's so many emotional steps and phases that you go through um, when you process traumatic grief like this. Um, in anger and rage was certainly one of them. And it's a process for everyone. You have to do whatever you have to do to get through that moment, through that day, through that hour. It was about being easy on yourself, not judging your own grief, not taking it out on others.
Right.
Um, and it takes a long time um, to really reach a place where you feel like even semi-normal again.
Yeah, and I love that you took the opportunity to put the emotions on paper. So, when you get them kind of out of your head and into the physical world, we can start feeling different about it. We can start processing things a little differently.
Yeah. And you have to do things like that because you have to find gratitude in little things, right? And one thing to be happy about that day, like maybe it's, oh, I got out of bed, or I actually got out of my pajamas today and put on clothes, or I went to the grocery store, I left the house. I mean, it's we we were knocked down so hard. I think any parent is that loses a child like that, especially suddenly. It's more than just getting the wind knocked out of you. You are, I tell this when I speak, like you don't just cry, you weep until your bones rattle. Um, it's an experience I wouldn't wish upon any soul, because it's so complex and layered and hard. We're grieving still, but we have two other children that we have to parent. And
Yeah.
so you have to find a way to transform and be a good, responsible, involved, committed parent, while still carrying this rucksack of pain and suffering on your back. I always say, I look at everyone now, Jared, is carrying an invisible backpack.
Yeah.
And in it is their own suffering because we all have it. And if we saw each other with our backpacks on, we'd probably treat each other a lot better, kinder, more compassionate, more empathy. And I'll give you for example, I was getting on the highway the other day and this guy cut me off. And then the old reaction would have been like honk the horn, maybe swear at him, give him the bird, whatever. My new approach is, oh, he must be in a hurry. Go ahead.
Right.
What am I going to, that's all, it's just how you look at things. Right. And it's so easy to get mad and react, but that's not really the right path.
Yeah, and that's a good transition because in your book you emphasize the importance of kindness and service that help you values that'll help you find strength and meaning. So how did you come to that conclusion? How did you reach that point that okay, for me to move forward, kindness and service is going to be an avenue I want to take?
Well, one of the earliest things I recognized that made me feel better was just being kind to people and helping them in whatever way I could. Sometimes it was as simple as holding a door for an elderly woman, or running an errand for somebody, or showing up, just showing up for a friend and listening. There's a lot of things, we talk about, like people always ask me now, like, hey, what can I do to help someone who lost a loved one? Because we struggle with that as a society,
Sure.
right? Like it's a very scary subject, grief and death. And I always tell people the first thing you can do, show up. Don't worry about saying the right thing or the wrong thing, because guess what? There's nothing you can say that's going to make that person feel any better in that moment. There really isn't. But showing up can make them feel good, that you're there for them. You can sit with them. You can just listen. You got their back. You mow their lawn. You'll walk their dogs. You'll grocery shop for them. You make their life easier in some way. But showing up is critical. And that's what I tell people to do, is show up. Not just when you lose a loved one, but show up for your friends and your family now in their lives. That's what matters most. And that's why we're here. We're here to show up. We're here to lift up one another and to love unconditionally. And that involves kindness, that involves service. And when you do all that, guess what? You're going to feel better about yourself. And when you can feel better about yourself, you start to take very positive and productive steps forward out from whatever darkness has surrounded you.
Yeah, and there's a ripple effect to that, right?
100%. Yeah, I always say that each act of kindness creates a ripple, and the echoes of kindness are endless.
Yeah.
And it takes no effort, zero effort, to be kind.
A lot of times I think it takes less effort to be nice than it does to be mean to people.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
And whether it's on social media, the computers, in person, it's harder to be mean than it is just to be nice and smile at somebody.
Yeah. And none of this is rocket science. It's the golden rule, right?
Right.
Treat people the way you want to be treated.
So,
I would say do unto others as if you were the others.
Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah, no, that's true. Talk to me about the scholarships, because I'm intrigued on that. So you go through, you create a way to continue Jake's legacy, right? Because there's that old saying out there that someone passes twice in life, right? When they actually pass and the last time their name's mentioned. So now you're letting his name continually be mentioned. Talk to me about the scholarships and how did you come up with that idea?
Well, in the days following Jake's death, we were obviously getting inundated with flowers and we had more than enough flowers to fill a house over several times. And my wife and I said, what would Jake want? And Jake, a year before, had been out with his church youth group to South Dakota, Pine Ridge Indian Reservation.
Yep.
And he helped children in a particular area, one of the poorest areas on the poorest reservation in our nation, learn life skills, and taught them how to read and work on their math skills and had fun with them. And it really left an indelible mark on his life. He came home transformed from that experience, but also equally upset with the discrepancies between how these kids lived in South Dakota and how he was growing up here in Connecticut. And he recognized how blessed he was and what opportunities he had and what opportunities they didn't, and how unfair and unequal it was. And he wanted to make a difference. He was looking forward to going back the next year. 2020 COVID canceled that trip, and he died 2 months later. So we decided to set up a scholarship that would help those young children who attended Red Cloud Indian School in Pine Ridge Indian Reservation go to college. So in partnership with Red Cloud Indian School and our church, we set up the scholarship. And initially it was called the Jake Panis Memorial Scholarship. And again, it was about carrying Jake's legacy of lifting up others and spreading joy. We knew it would make him super proud and happy to know he was helping these young kids just like he wanted to. And then in 2 days before Christmas in 2020, it was our first Christmas after losing Jake. We were 4 months into it. It was horrible. It was dark. Our house was completely joyless. We were trying to put a face on it for Liam and, make him have at least a happy Christmas, but it was tough. And we took a walk. My wife and I took a walk 2 days before Christmas. I left my phone at home. We came back 45 minutes later or so, and I had a message on my phone, and it was an 843 prefix, which is low country, South Carolina, like Charleston area. And I thought it was a college buddy, probably calling to try to cheer me up. And I listened to the voicemail, and it was head coach Shane Beamer, the head football coach at the University of South Carolina. He literally had just been hired 2 weeks before. He had a million things to do, including re-recruiting the kids that were on the team, recruiting new kids, hiring a new coaching staff. He had his hands full, and here he was taking time out to call us. He had heard about our story and Jake's love for South Carolina. I'm a graduate. So Jake grew up, watching Gamecock games and rooting for him. And Jake's goal was to go to South Carolina and follow in my footsteps. And after talking with Coach Beamer, and he was so kind and concerned with Liam, and talking to Liam, it reminded me of how Jake looked after Liam. It was very brotherly. And as a father, I felt a responsibility to make sure Jake got to South Carolina somehow. And I had been percolating on that.
Yeah.
And after I hung up with Shane, I realized I think I might have a way to get Jake to South Carolina. And so after the holidays passed, I reached back out to Shane and said, I have this idea. I shared it with them. We'll create this walk-on scholarship for a walk-on football player. Jake played football and lacrosse, and he loved Gamecock football. We wanted to award a walk-on football player who exemplified Jake's leadership skills and his grit and his grace and his care for his community and his just love of spreading joy and lifting up others. And when I shared it with Coach Beamer, he loved it. He was a walk-on himself at Virginia Tech under his father, and he embraced it right away. We raised the money, and it's now an endowed scholarship at the University of South Carolina. We've awarded 4 of them in the last 4 years. It's been incredibly meaningful. It's named the Jake Panis Walk-On Scholarship. And when Liam and I went out in May of 2022 to South Dakota to award the first scholarship there, we were talking to the Lakotas who were in the administration at the school, and they asked us how we came up with that name, Walk-On. And I explained a walk-on student athlete is someone who's not on a scholarship, but they tend to be the gritty, tough players. Sometimes they're smaller in size, or they're overlooked because they came from a small school, and they just haven't had a chance to really showcase their skills and talents, or they just want to be part of the team still. But some of them are really good players, and they go on to earn scholarships. And after explaining it to them, they said, "Oh, it's very interesting. We have a different meaning for the phrase walk on." And I said, really? And they said, yeah, we believe that when someone dies, that that's when they walk on in their journey, that death is not the end point of a linear pathway. Um, and it was kind of like the universe brought it all together. So, and they insisted we rename the scholarship out there, the Jake Panis Walk On Scholarship, which we happily did. We've awarded 3 scholarships to young Lakota women who graduated from Red Cloud Indian School. They all come from a particular area called Red
Yep.
Shirt Table on the reservation. And it's been awesome. I mean, that's 7 kids right now walking around with part of Jake in them. And like you said, it means people are talking about Jake. They say his name, they remember him. They took, they carry on a part of his legacy. And I can't begin to even put words to how meaningful that is.
And are you following their stories? Are you in contact
Oh
with
yeah.
them?
Yeah, I stay in touch with all of them, some more than others because they're kids. But
Yeah.
I make it known that I'm available, and it's great to stay in touch with them. It's kind of feeds my, I guess, need to father more children, and to know that these kids are not dissimilar from Jake. They have enthusiastic dreams and desires and goals, and they want to achieve them. And if I can help them in any way along that path, I'm here to do that. And it's just fun to stay in touch. They're youthful, right? They
Yeah.
give you send their positive youthful energy back to me, which lifts me up. Um, yeah, and it's been very inspiring and uplifting to to kind of award these scholarships, and then to moreover to stay in touch with the kids and see how they progress on their life journeys, because they so many of them, they're not going to play football in the National Football League. Um, but they're going to go on to do really cool, powerful things in their life. And it's a baton, right? They've been handed this baton. And one
Yep.
day, I hope that they're going to be able to lift up and inspire somebody else and maybe, you know, do something similar for another person the way we've done for them.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. I love that. I love that you have two different groups there, right? Because yeah, the whole reservation life is a different thing, and it sounds like it was very impactful for Jake to see that being out west quite a bit. We've seen that as well, and then to walk on to get a walk on for a big time football in the SEC, right? Like there's
Yeah.
nothing, no college sport bigger than football down south. Like that's the thing. I think I love how you picked a walk on because they reflect the very characteristics you saw in Jake, right? That grit, that toughness. They're overlooked.
Yeah.
They weren't the highly recruited, but they had a dream and they
Yep.
sacrificed themselves to give it a shot.
Yeah. They're just a great mentality. And that's really what it is. And to bring it full circle, walk on also for me means what I had to do in my life and what Liam had to do and Kelly has to do. We have to find a way to walk on. And the reality is that we all do, right? We all
Right.
suffer in some way, shape, or form. But no matter what happens or how it happens, we all have to find a way to walk on in our life. Um, and that's just how it is. And so you can either, we all have a choice. You can wallow in pity, negativity, darkness, or you can pick yourself up and slowly but surely find a way to walk on. And yeah, that whatever bad thing that happened to you, it's a part of your life and it's part of your story now, but it doesn't have to be the full story. And I also relate it to people would ask me sometimes, so tell me how Jake died. And my answer is no, let me tell you how he lived.
Much more important, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I love that, and it's just fascinating, right? We're talking about the notes across the time, and just even choosing this title for your book and how it means so different things to so many people, including yourself. But it's all that's the power of sharing story, right? Is
100%. And that's what I tell people is Walk On is more than a book. The messages transcend the pages and it's a mindset. It really is. I think to be successful in this life, you have to have, and all the answers are within us. We often look externally for answers to save us, whether that's a person, a thing. Oh, if I buy this, I'll feel better. Or if I
yeah,
get this job, I'll feel better. No, it's fleeting. The answers are all within you, and you have to source your resilience, your grit, your grace, your authenticity, your integrity. It all comes from within. So um, it really is. Walk on is a mindset more than anything.
yeah, I love that. And moving forward doesn't mean you forget, right? I think sometimes that's what holds us back is like,
Oh
oh, I don't
yeah,
want to forget him. No, you're moving forward means you're remembering.
yeah, yeah. It's important because oftentimes people will say you got to learn to let go. And what I learned in the process is I needed to let go, but I was letting go of my suffering, not letting go of Jake.
Yeah.
And when I was able to let go of Jake or suffering, I was able to kind of actually take that was my first step forward. Was like I don't want to I don't want to be I don't want to feel like this anymore, right?
Yeah.
And I want to I'm always gonna. I mean, I think of my son 10,000 times a day. And there are moments of sadness that come over me, but they're just moments. And then now I'm able to smile and think of the best of Jake and the amazing person he was and the imprint that he's left on so many people, and more importantly, that he continues to leave on people through his light and his love and his energy that still abounds this earth, just in a different way.
Yeah. Steve, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today and for what you're doing in the world and sharing Jake's story and allowing him to live on through service of others. I can't commend you enough on what that means and how much I appreciate being able to be part of the story today.
Thanks a lot for having me on, Jared. I appreciate it. It's nice talking with you.
And where can our audience connect with you, Steve? Where can they get the book?
Yeah, so the book's available online at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target, Books a Million. I also have a website. It's my name, Stephen, Stephen, Panis, Panus.com. I'm a motivational or an inspirational speaker. So if someone's looking for a speaker for an event, they can, get all the information and contact information at my website. Again, I'm really dedicated my life moving forward to serving others and to helping other people overcome their own struggles, overcome adversity, find their inner resilience, and become the best version of themselves.
Ah, man, I can't wait to see the impact you're going to continue to create and to be part of your journey, my friend.
Thanks again, Jared.
Thank you.